The Kent School District Board meetings are held in public on the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month at 7 p.m. at the Administration Center in accordance to the Washington State Open Public Meetings Act. Regular meetings include presentations and reports dealing with district operations, as well as time set aside for public comment. Now, here are your Kent School District Board of Directors. Welcome to tonight's board meeting.
Call this meeting to order, and I have invited Mr. John Sander to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. This is the second meeting of the school year, and this is a meeting of the board which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. We allow opportunity for public comments later in the agenda. If you would like to address the board, fill out a blue card on the back. I don't have an example, but it's a white card with a blue border, and bring it to the dais. If you wish to speak to an agenda item, please indicate on the card, and your name will be called at that portion of the agenda. You will have 3 minutes to speak. All right, Dr. Watts, are there any changes to the agenda, please?
President Benjamin, members of the board, Ms. Howley, please note that agenda item 6.01, legislative update, has been added to the agenda this evening.
Okay, I'd like to ask for a motion to add the legislative agenda update to the agenda. Is there a second? Are there any discussions or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Okay, motion passes. Next up is our proclamation on Attendance Awareness Month. And I will be happy to read that. It's a September Attendance Awareness Month. Whereas good attendance is essential to student achievement and high school graduation, and we are committed to reducing chronic absenteeism rates with a focus starting as early as pre-kindergarten. Whereas chronic absence, missing 10% or more of school for any reason, including excused and unexcused absences, or just 2 or 3 days a month, is a proven predictor of academic struggle and dropout rate, whereas improving attendance and reducing chronic absence takes commitment, collaboration, and tailored approaches to particular challenges and strengths in each community, whereas research shows that chronic absence as early as pre-kindergarten and kindergarten is associated with lower third grade reading scores, and by 6th grade it becomes a leading indicator of course failure and dropout of high school. Whereas chronic absence can be significantly reduced when schools, parents, and communities work together to monitor and promote good attendance and address hurdles that keep children from getting to school. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District proclaims that our schools will stand with the nation in recognizing September as Attendance Awareness Month. We hereby commit to high student achievement and reducing chronic absenteeism to give all children an equitable opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive academically, emotionally, and socially. And I'd like to ask Mr. Randy Heath to accept this proclamation. Next is 3.0, Leadership Development Program Update. And Dr. Watts, would you like to introduce?
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Luann Becker, Leadership Development Officer, who has taken on an amazing district-wide initiative that is based on the premise of leadership development and growing our own. She'll be reporting this evening on an update on our leadership development pipeline. Thank you, Dr. Baker.
Board President Venkatachalam, board members, Dr. Watts, and Ms. Howley. This presentation today is going to provide an overview for our board on the leadership pipeline that is currently supporting our teacher leaders that are pursuing their administrative credentials, our assistant principals who are new to the position this year, and our aspiring assistant principals. And this is defined as our assistant principals currently serving that are really pursuing the principalship in the next 1 to 3 years here in Kent. And so we know where our great principals come from. They come from our classrooms, right? They come from the great teacher leaders that we have in our classrooms each day. And what we know is we need about 5 viable leadership candidates for every 1 position. But then we just need to choose the one that is the very best fit for that school community, and the students and families. So each of us has ownership of Goal 4 in the blueprint, and our primary objectives, how it connects to the leadership pipeline specifically, is to identify and manage the leadership talent, attracting and sustaining a diverse group of talented administrators, and increasing the internal hires who feel well mentored and supported in their pursuit of leadership positions in Kent. And this aligns to the current research on school improvement as well. And what we know is leadership matters. Our theory of action was really developed to ensure that we had an alignment between our strategy of support for leadership development and our outcomes. And this was really what I call human capital development. What we know is that people matter, not these famous people, but really these famous people, right? And I wish I could find little pictures of all our principals and put them up there. But this is really about moving that forward. And as a data-informed organization, we are committed to the learning of both students and staff throughout the district. And what we knew is this 1/3 was really an important number, because 1/3 of our principals are in their first 3 years on the job. And the truth is, although we had very talented and we continue to have quality leaders in KSD and our principals and assistant principals, we had no bench, right? We had no way of knowing who was coming up through the pipeline for that development. And our principal hiring pattern actually confirmed the exact same thing, that we didn't have our grow your own model of leadership development. Our actual 4-year average of principal hiring prior to this year was that we had to go to the outside over 70% of the time to fill our principal positions. And I do want to state that working with averages can cause anomalies when we have small numbers. So for instance, in 16-17, we only hired 4 new principals. And in 15-16, we hired 8 new principals. And so that does impact the proportions of the percentages. So through the use of some of our current principals and administrators, we developed planning teams that backward mapped the outcomes to support the needs of these 3 leadership groups. And the outcome was this academy design model. So each academy builds on one another. You're going to notice when I show you all 3 that instructional leadership is built into each academy. When you see foundations of KSD leadership, those are our beliefs, our missions, our core values of equity, excellence, and community that we want driving every leader. Our chief officers were in key positions with the interns this last year as well, and this year to share this foundation, as with Dr. Watts. And we want building leaders who aren't just competent building managers, they're professionals that know how to move a school, support high quality teaching and learning. So the PILA program, which we call it, Principal Intern Leadership Academy, This is where one of our teacher leaders enters a principal preparation program, and then they apply to be an intern in the Kent School District. This is a very rigorous process. Our focus in PLA here is this kind of intersectionality of where the intern is in their coursework, in their master's program, and they're having all these experiences as an intern, and they need someone to make sense of it, right? They need someone to help them make connections between everything they learned in their coursework and everything they're experiencing as an administrative intern. So what we really want to do also is just make this pipeline really intentional. And so we use the expertise of our current school district principals and assistant principals and other leaders in the system to make this happen. And I'd actually like to pause here just for a moment because we do have 3 of our administrative interns who could join us tonight. Not all of them were at the leadership event earlier in the summer. So when I call your name, please stand. Tracy Dorr is an administrative administrative intern doing her principal program through Heritage University, and she is at Cedar Valley. Thank you, Tracy. Carly Wyatt is in the University of Washington Tacoma program and is currently assigned to Scenic Hill. And Cynthia Huber is our coordinator of music, arts, health, PE, foreign language, and in our teaching and learning division, and she is doing both her principal and program administrator credential program through UW Danforth. So when we talk about that, yeah, they're just amazing. And oh gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. And please stand, Danielle DeJong. Danielle's doing her internship, a split internship between Carriage Crest and Cedar Heights right now. It may actually be switching to Matson, but she is completing her program through Western Governors University. Thank you, Danielle. So the next program that we had built was called the New AP Leadership Academy, and we kind of call it NALA for short. This was backwards designed because these are our current assistant principals, especially last year when we had the 13. 13 must be a magic number because we also have 13 administrative interns this year, so really excited about that. This backwards design really talks also, this system is built on this, from building positive behavioral systems in a school to a very technical support to how do you manage paperwork and the accountability in an evaluation process. And so this program actually, I was just very pleased, we were actually able to build it into the time that the SIOs, elementary SIOs, meet with the assistant principals. The benefit of the NALA program actually had what I'll just say an unintended positive consequence in that it connected all our brand new assistant principals together. And so this was all during last year. And so really by about the 4th meeting, they were started calling each other when there was a question, right? They started building those relationships with each other, not just having their principal as a resource, which is a great resource, or their SIO, but being able to really call someone up and say, gosh, you know, I have this that I'm working on. And that was really what I called kind of that AP professional learning community. They built that themselves once they got connected within the system. And one of my favorites, obviously, was our Kent Aspiring Principals Academy. We initially didn't know how much interest we were going to have in this academy. How many current assistant principals are in Kent who really, that their next 1 to 3 year goal professionally was, I want to serve as a principal in Kent. And so we actually had 13 of our assistant principals this last year identified that they really saw themselves pursuing that principal position. Although it was not required. 2 of our assistant principals that actually were hired this last, over the spring to be principals serving this year actually participated and were full participants in CAPA. And because the use of APs last year was new for so many elementary principals, the elementary SIOs began working with both the principals and the APs together to ensure that kind of high-quality leadership development and the distribution of duties so the assistant principal could see the visioning and system thinking that the SIO brings to that leadership meeting every week. The CAPA design was just a little slightly different than the other two academies that kept everybody together. The CAPA design is really based on the learning needs differentiated for the leaders that we have in the organization. So this academy is based on what we call modules, so leaders can self-identify their areas of growth because that's what adults do. When they want to learn something, they go after that area of learning. And so they could choose those areas of growth and development. So what are our next steps? This year, we're going to be focusing on also student leadership development, which we think is also that direct pipeline. We're going to do some pipeline development for some of our other staffing areas, explore some certification requirements. There is a way for Kent School District to be our own certifying agency in the state of Washington, so we wouldn't be so dependent on some of these. The next group I'm going to talk about, which is our university partnerships, which is very much expanded this last year. And then continuing to do these other three indicators. And I'll just tell you, like, second to the last one, the use of internal leaders to deliver the academy modules, that internal development. When I make a call to one of our building leaders and say, your SIO recommended that you're one of the best people in the district doing this work right now, can you come teach the interns? Every single time it was a yes. And so, and they were just super excited, always did an amazing job. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just heard wonderful reports about how effective this is, and it's very exciting to know that we are growing our own. So, well done.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree. One area I'm particularly interested in is paraeducators and leadership opportunities for them and pathway to becoming a certified teacher. So can you say more about what our thoughts are in the future and how
That is something that we're looking at really closely. Matt Gerard, who is probably closest to that work, and he and I have been partnering over this last year. We went to some kind of certifying meetings to learn a little bit more about how we can become that pathway, and I see that really as potentially a real viable option in our future, specific to that, develop those pathways in all those other areas, not just for our teacher leaders.
So again, I appreciate all that you're doing on this. This is very exciting. I was curious, how often do the different academies meet?
So each of the academies right now, the Principal Intern Leadership Academy meets once a month. New assistant principals met once a month last year. And then Kappa met sort of as needed. We actually did 9-week modules because they were learning new skills. And these are our current assistant principals. We needed them to go back that very next week and apply them. And then we would meet that very next week to debrief how to go. And so those were more in a condensed sort of fashion and kind of a 9-week off and on. So they had some homework and some follow-up they need to do to try out the new skills.
So do you decide what they're getting in the different academies as far as, what content they're receiving? Or do they have input saying, hey, this is content that we need as well?
So we originally had done a survey with some of the current assistant principals about what their needs are. I think that always needs to be refreshed. And with the interns, the unique part of their development is because the group is so different every time from year to year that I actually evaluate the sessions after each session to ensure it's meeting their needs exactly and timely. And so based on feedback from last year's interns, we actually built in a whole new session this year because they said, gosh, when our university was supposed to give us this content and it wasn't deep enough. We wish we would have had it from Kent. And so a whole new session was built into the calendar this year.
Okay. So how does everybody who says they want to be a member of the academy be able to get into the academy, or do we have a waiting list?
That is a great question. So for PILA, which is our Principal Intern Leadership Academy, very rigorous process. They have to apply not only to their university and get recommendations from their current principal, peers, complete the application, complete an interview process to get to the university. They have to do the same thing here in Kent. And we probably accept between 75 and 80% of our administrative interns who apply their first year. Interns can apply to consecutive years to be able to maybe go back and grow in some areas and then reapply. The other two areas right now, we are allowing our current leaders to self-select and there's not an application process. If they want to grow and know in this area, we are going to welcome them into the academy. I think as we get further developed into these academies and defined, we may have some different criteria. Right now, we're just excited. This is time outside their day. This is that they're leaving their schoolhouse, they've done a full day, and they're coming here because they want to learn more and are committed to their leadership development.
No, that's great. I too just want to add that I've been hearing great things about your work, colleagues. So I did wonder, when I got asked about the paraeducators, I heard quite a bit about the work with HR, and can you tell us how they intersect the HR work with your work?
With my work as well. You know, I think probably going back to like goal 4 in the blueprint is the best connection. I don't want to do that without, but right, it's not just the recruitment and hiring, it is the retention and support. And so and actually I think what was just really helpful over this last year is Matt Gerard, Pam Onsing, and I sort of got in the same room, and we said, okay, where is this handoff? Right, Matt and some of his recruitment teams were out there recruiting, hiring, and then they need to go back and recruit and hire, right? And then they were supporting, and then they needed to hand off, right? And this handoff was a balance between whether they go through their administrative support and then where did they get their leadership development. And so I think we're just kind of, I guess, anchoring all those pieces of the pipeline so it is really clear to everyone in the system.
Thank you so much for the teamwork. Appreciate it. Thank you for all your work. Did you?
Yeah, but my last question is just cost-wise. So what is this, I think it's a great program, I absolutely want to continue it, but what is the actual cost to the district to be able to do this program?
The great thing is because we have such amazing leaders, not just in this room, but in our buildings, I have not had to contract for any expertise that we don't have here.
Thank you.
That's time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, all right. We'll go on to 4.01. Resolution number 1525, deferred action for childhood arrivals. I would like to ask for a motion to approve resolution number 1525, deferred action for childhood arrivals.
So
Okay. Right. Are there any discussions, questions, comments?
And I think reading all the whereases on there, it really shows how important it is and how embedded it is in everything we're doing and our values and what we're required to do. Very well done. Thank you to the staff for preparing it.
I really appreciated the part about what we're doing as our district. That was a very important part as well. So.
Yes.
I was wanting to share it with our congressional delegation too, and so I'd be glad to send that off unless you want to do that as
Well, happy to have you send that.
Okay.
As long as we do it, I think. I did want to point that out, that the resolution is really urging the Congress to protect DACA recipients, and it's affirming support for all of our students regardless of citizen status or immigration status. So I just want to be clear that we are advocating for that, urging Congress to protect that. So this resolution is pretty detailed, and I also want to thank Dr. Watts for his letter to the community and to staff regarding protecting DACA. We have to remember that we have a richly diverse district, and we're home to many students who were brought to this country through no fault of their own, and we are really committed to all of our students. So I just want to add that, and thank you to staff for all of your work on that. So at this point, I'd like to call it for a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Okay, motion passes. Next up, 4.02, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Light Torch Grant. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Light Torch Grant. Is there a second?
I'll second
Are there any discussions or questions? Okay, hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
that.
All those opposed say no. Thank you, motion passes. Next up, 5.0 consent agenda. Would the board like to pull any agenda items for discussion?
Oh, I was just gonna pull 5.08, there's one in the comment about that one.
Okay. 5.08 is the amendment to resolution number 1409, Jim Auckland District Operations Center. Okay, anywhere else? I'd like to pull 5.01 and 5.07, please. Okay. So I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus 5.01, 5.07, and 5.08. Is there a second? Other, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, aye. All those opposed say no. Okay. Motion passes minus 5.01, 5.07, 5.08. Okay, 5.01, starting with that. I just wanted to ask that in the meeting minutes, we add the timeline that was shared for Director Hanson's vacancy to submit the application, that it just be noted that it was shared. And 5.07, I'm wondering if there's anybody who can share our first year experience with Valley Cities and Counseling, positive or constructive feedback. Thank you, Brian.
All right. Good evening, President Van Gosselin, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley. Yes, first year was our first year embarking on our partnership with Valley Cities to provide mental health care in 7 of our schools. We chose to go a little slow with this from the very beginning because we wanted to make sure we were building a model that worked, that included payments from Kent School District, but also everybody that we can get reimbursed through Medicaid, so we can serve as many kids as we possibly can. So we had regular quarterly meetings. We've served a large number of students. We can give a report at some point, or we send you some information on some of the statistics we've gotten there. We're trying to really determine what is the best evaluation model beyond just the number of students that we've served. We have some of those numbers, but we're ready to go on to year 2 with a modest increase in we're adding one more high school at this point to serve. We would have liked to go on a little more, but we were trying to be fiscally responsible and not take on more than we could at this point, but still be moving forward. So
the cost of it. I noticed it in the budget, we went down from $300,000 to down $180,000. And was that what we spent last year, 180, or we just?
No, actually, last year we ended up spending just a little bit over $100,000 in our service, and so we probably will not spend what we have in our budget for that unless we're very confident. Because some of it is a little bit not so certain because it relies on us keeping that ratio of students that are Medicaid and non-Medicaid, and so we watch that closely. We meet with Valley Cities every month to look at the reports and make sure that we're staying within our budget.
And we were at just a certain number of schools, and is it the same number as we were last year? Or?
Right, so we're continuing to serve the 4 elementary schools that we were serving last year, 2 middle schools, and then we're going to be at 2 high schools this year. We did increase all of the elementary schools also to a full day of service, whereas last year we had started them at half a day. About halfway through the year we realized that just wasn't quite enough, so we gave them a full day, and that has worked out better. So, all right.
Oh, okay. I just want to make a comment because I was surprised to see we were changing the name, removing Jim Hoffman's name from District Operations Center, but then I read that he had requested that, and so I just wanted to make that clear to everyone. That was the reason for the change.
Thank you, Art. Okay, so I'd like to call for a vote on 5.01, 5.07, 5.08, 5.01 as amended. All those in favor, say aye. Call for a motion to approve 5.01, 5.08, and 5.07. Thank you. Is there a second? All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion passes. 6.0, Board of Directors information. 6.01, legislative update. Is there any information? Discuss, share?
Yes, I wanted to share some information and remind you, fellow board members, Dr. Walter and staff have input that, well, first of all, too, I want to thank my fellow board members because WASDA Legislative Assembly is coming up next week, where we are voting on the priorities to go to the legislature next year. And with our fiscal situation, we knew that we didn't want to spend district's funds to go. So board members, everyone contributed money so that we will be able to be represented and vote there. So thank you for that. And then I'm asking for input, and I'll send you the reminder email if you don't have it handy. Sorry, I'm trying to quickly. Quickly through our agenda. Well, one of the things I know in my email, okay, so there's quite a lot of information, and so there could be either, and you can share your thoughts today or email me by the 20th next week. Just if you just initially want to put thoughts on what are your highest priorities, because we get to prioritize things. So, whatever priorities for the legislature in terms of funding or policy, send those. If you do have a chance to look through the proposals, that's great. You can give me at least 15 priorities because we get to pick our top 15 ones out of everything. And then the second thing that would be really helpful to have input on is because some of the proposals actually are like new ones or might be continuing, and on most of those, the WASDA Legislative Committee said they recommend that they pass. And so typically those tend to pass. But I noticed there were 3 proposals that the Legislative Committee said do not pass. So I'm particularly interested in your input on those. And I'll just mention what they are. One of them was introduced by Jenny Lund. Some of you might recognize her name. And it was related to access to collective bargaining agreements and creating Public Employment Relations Commission a digital library of all the collective bargaining agreements that would be posted there. So that was one that had a do not pass recommendation. A second one was alternative assessments for high school graduation requirements and promoting the SAT and ACT. And that one was pretty complex, why that was not do not pass, but you might want to take a look at that. The third one was a do not pass, and this is one that our colleague Harlan, who's a doctor at Multicare in Covington, emergency room doctor, who's on the Issaquah School Board, and they put it forward, and he was soliciting our support for it, and it sounded like a good idea to me, so that one I'd like to vote for, and we're curious what you think. And what it is it's really encouraging removing barriers for being able to hire teachers internationally. And so if they came with credentials from another country, making it easier for them to be teachers here in one of our districts. And really the notion of having a global workforce and helping to meet the needs of some of our students who speak languages other than English is a good strategy to me. So those are interesting. So is there any comments or input right now for me? Question?
I guess one thing I would add is, so one of the reasons why they were soliciting our help is so it was Eastern Washington that was saying, hey, they didn't really think that was a good idea, at least one district there. It's a weighted vote, and so our vote carries quite a bit, so when we endorse something, it does help, and so just throwing that out there, that's one of the reasons why it's important for us to be at the Legislative Assembly, is because we are a larger district and it is a weighted vote. So.
Okay, 6.02, July 2017 financial statements. Any discussions or comments? 6.03, general fund object of expenditure for July 2017. Hearing none, we'll go to 7.0, communication from the audience. We do not have any cards from the audience, so we will move on to the superintendent's report. This might be the fastest board meeting ever.
Sure. Speak slowly. So, thank you, President Mendoza, again, members of the board, Ms. Sally, and to staff and community members and friends. I reflect on this evening's meeting by simply thinking about what my parents taught me, often reminding me at a young age that challenging times do not necessarily build character. They said they instead reminded me that challenging times actually reveal character. While current fiscal challenges did not arrive overnight, we are fully aware that past and some of our more recent organizational decisions have impacted our ability to, what I would call, build our future together in support of the plan, our strategic plan, and do so at a much faster pace. I am confident, however, that our course corrections, along with the timely support from organizations such as OSPI, and KSD and WASA, will really make a difference. And may I remind each one of you that our budget is, in fact, an investment portfolio. It's not simply dollar bills with the faces of former presidents and historical figures. In truth, our budget reflects the faces of each one of our children. And we can't wait a moment longer to address their varied needs. That's part of the frustration and the challenge. However, the sense of urgency has been reached. And I'm excited about that. We refer to this increased sense of urgency and our newly important organizational direction is KSD 2.0. KSD 2.0 consists of 4 strategic priorities and accompanying initiatives, each of which is aligned to our 4 strategic goals. The first strategic priority is transforming teaching and learning. The second, communication. The third, resource management and fourth, leadership development, which we heard this evening, for an example of our pipeline development. We're very proud of our school district. We will work much harder and smarter now in the future to achieve equitable and excellent outcomes for our community as a whole. I look forward to supporting the leadership throughout these efforts. That concludes my report this evening.
I'm not going to contribute to the length of this meeting, so I just want to say I started mentoring my elementary school mentee this week, and it was really good to see her again. She was happy to see me, and we had a really good first session. So, and I've been talking with the people over at KPA, and probably going to get started with my KPA student next week. So, I had a really great talk with Dean Pittman at Emerald Park yesterday, Tuesday, just about budget and how things were going there and class size and what we were doing on Wednesday afternoons, and it was very informative. So, I enjoyed that.
Well, one of the things I wanted to say was I wanted to acknowledge the tragedy that happened at Freeman High School today. And my heart and prayers go out to the students and staff and families there. And it just made me so grateful for all of our staff here that do such a good job of making sure our students are safe. And then I wanted to share, Debbie and I had a wonderful experience at Leadership WASDA over in Spokane. And I'll share too that I paid for my own travel credit over there. And it was just an incredible opportunity to learn from leaders at Rogers High School in Spokane and a middle school that's feeding in, and the success they've had with turnaround and their equity work and their use of data, and so many similarities to what we're doing here. And then I hope I'm not stealing too much of your thunder. And then seeing the research from the researchers at Gonzaga around what are the common sort of systems, things that you need in place for all they've learned from all the turnaround schools like Sunnyside did. And of course, there are things we know about and that we need to continue to strive to do. And the first, okay. The academic press, and I've always heard the term rigor, but it was academic press is how it was explained. And then, of course, the support, so everyone has supports to meet up to those high expectations. And then relational trust. And so all the things we're doing around supports and relationship building and culture is just so critical. So that was amazing. And then another thing I wanted to share for you all to think about, as you move forward, and particularly with new board members, that at each of these leadership, they've shared protocols with us, all these different protocols that are excellent for whether you've read an article and you want to discuss it, or you have some problem you're trying to solve. And so there's just a great resource that Debbie or Colleen can make available that we all can be sharing to discuss things together and to move forward.
So I think maybe it was because I was in Spokane, as well as the fact that I care deeply about our students. When I heard the news today about Spokane, it was very dear to my heart. So I do appreciate and want to echo again all the things that we do to make sure that our students are safe, and I appreciate that. It was a great conference that focused on leadership for change, as I was stated, and one of the things that we do in this program is we have a project that we have to do at the end that we have to present in November. And the one that I chose was how can we take things that we learn at different conferences and share them out. And so that's what I'm in the process of doing, because I think as we do some of our BSGT work, there's a lot of things that we've done in this leadership cadre that would be good to be able to share and help our board grow and develop. So more to come on that as I work on finishing up my project on that. And I also paid for my own transportation. I am looking forward to mentoring. So I've been told that I believe the student that I had last year is back again, which is really good for the school that I am at. And we're just working on getting the final paperwork signed. I'm hoping it doesn't take quite as long as last year. It took 4 months to get that signed, so I'm hoping it goes a little bit faster this year. But again, I do appreciate that everything that everyone does, and I guess every time we hear tragedies, it always reminds me to really make sure that you're telling those that you care about that you care about. So, thank you.
Okay, I want to first thank, I had a meeting with Kent Youth and Family Services. They were meeting with all of the candidates, and I am still a candidate. And so I appreciated the discussion we had on partnerships with our school district. And, you know, it was nice to see some of our staff members there as well as part of the board. And one of the things that we discussed was possibly partnering with the legislative advocacy with Kent Youth and Family Services. So I always think about that. When I first ran, it was one of the platform working in the community and partnerships, and what does that really mean? So they really drilled me in some of those questions, and it made me think quite a bit about how can we better partner, and we need them so much more now than ever. And so that was a huge realization, and I really appreciate their efforts to work with us. I also wanted to mention an invitation by a Kentwood teacher who's teaching special ed and arts in his classroom, and he has an invitation to board members who would like to visit, and I'm planning to go one afternoon. I just don't know yet when I can get off work, but I'll let you know ahead of time when I'm going, but you can freely go at any time. And I'm excited about it. He's really enthused about special ed and art, especially combination. And finally, I just want to mention a couple of events coming up. The Kent Food Bank Breakfast is Friday, October 13th at 7 a.m. Last year, I had 4 tables filled. I don't know if I'm going to make it with 4 tables, but I'm sure I'm going to try 5. Okay, Dr. Watts says 5. So I don't know if the list is going around, but as a reminder, Kent Food Bank serves 100% of our Kent School District students and families. So very important event. And then finally, Kent Community Foundation fundraiser benefit. Even though I'm on the board of Kent Schools Foundation, there's also Kent Community Foundation, and they're having a benefit. Kent Has Talent competition. Auditions are September 23rd, and October 7th is the main event at Kent Meridian. And with that, I also want to thank the community members for all of their contributions. I especially noted every meeting in the donations forums how diverse our community partners are, and how generous they are. And so thank you so much for everybody, and Dr. Herman for working on the grant as well. Thank you so much for giving them the hard financial times. You know, we really need that community support. So thank you, and that's all we have. And so have a good trip home, and have a good night. Thank you so much. We're adjourned.